She wasn't supposed to look like that. When Daniel saw her standing at the far end of the courthouse hallway, one hand resting gently on her stomach, the world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. For a second, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. Maybe it was the sleepless nights. Maybe it was the guilt he'd buried so deep he could barely breathe around it. But no. Ava was 7 months pregnant. And he was just finding out. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above them. Lawyers moved past in a blur of black suits and hurried whispers, but Daniel heard nothing except the thunder of his own heartbeat. The last time he had seen his wife, she had been standing in their kitchen, tears streaking down her face, telling him she couldn't live like this anymore. That she couldn't keep begging for love from a man who treated their marriage like a business arrangement. That was 8 months ago. Now she stood in front of him, round with life, glowing in a way that made his chest ache. "You're pregnant," he finally managed to say, his voice barely audible. Ava's hand tightened protectively over her belly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes, those deep, familiar eyes, carried months of silent storms. "Yes," she said softly. "I am." The words hit him harder than any accusation could have. Daniel had always been the practical one. The planner. The man who believed emotions were distractions and vulnerability was weakness. He built his career with ruthless focus, climbing from a junior accountant to partner in just 6 years. He worked late nights, missed anniversaries, skipped dinners. He told himself it was for them. For their future. But somewhere along the way, he stopped noticing that Ava's laughter had grown quieter. That her smiles no longer reached her eyes. That the house they bought together felt emptier with every promotion he celebrated alone. They had tried for a baby once, early in their marriage. After 2 painful miscarriages, Ava had broken in ways he didn't understand. Instead of holding her, he buried himself deeper in work. He told himself staying strong meant staying busy. She told him staying strong meant staying present. They stopped trying after that. Or at least, he thought they had. "You didn't tell me," he said now, though even to his own ears, it sounded less like a question and more like a wounded confession. "You didn't answer my calls," Ava replied gently. "And when you did, it was always about paperwork. About dividing assets. About moving on." Her words were not sharp. They were tired. Daniel remembered those calls. He had kept them short, efficient. Safer that way. He had convinced himself that drawing it out would only make it worse. He hadn't asked about her life. Hadn't asked how she was feeling. Hadn't asked if she was okay. He hadn't asked because he was afraid she would say she wasn't. The courtroom doors opened, and a clerk called their names. Final hearing. No contest. A clean, clinical ending to what had once been sacred. Ava took a step forward. Daniel didn't move. "Is it?" His voice cracked, and for the first time in years, he didn't care who heard it. "Is it mine?" A flicker of pain crossed her face, quickly replaced by something steadier. "Yes, Daniel. It's yours." The hallway seemed to close in around him. His mind raced back, counting months, replaying memories. That night. The night before she left. They had argued for hours. She had packed a bag. He had stood there, numb and defensive, telling her maybe space was what they needed. But later, when the anger burned out, they had sat on the edge of their bed in silence. She had rested her head on his shoulder. He had wrapped his arms around her, holding her like he used to when they were newly married and everything felt possible. They hadn't said, "I love you." They hadn't said, "Goodbye." Now that night lived inside her. Inside their child. "Why didn't you fight for us?" he asked suddenly, the question ripping out of him before he could stop it. Ava's eyes shimmered. "I did. For years." He had no answer to that. Inside the courtroom, the judge glanced at Ava's belly, then at Daniel, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. Papers were shuffled. Legal terms were spoken. Words like irreconcilable differences and dissolution echoed off the wooden walls. Daniel barely heard them. All he could see was Ava's hand, tracing slow circles over her stomach. His child. Their miracle. A second chance he hadn't even known existed. When the judge asked if there were any final statements, Daniel surprised himself by standing. "Yes," he said, his voice unsteady but growing stronger with every word. "I do." Ava turned to him, startled. "I thought providing was enough," he continued. "I thought if I built a stable life, the rest would take care of itself. I didn't understand that love isn't measured in paychecks or square footage. I didn't understand that showing up matters more than succeeding." His throat tightened. He forced himself to keep going. "I was afraid of failing you. Afraid of not being enough after the miscarriages. So instead of staying, I ran. Into work. Into distance. I convinced myself you'd be better off without me." A tear slipped down Ava's cheek. "But seeing you today," he whispered, "seeing our child. I realize I've already missed too much. And I don't want to miss another second." The courtroom was silent. "I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened," he said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness I haven't earned. I'm asking for a chance to show up. To be present. To learn how to love you the way you deserved all along." Ava looked down at her belly, then back at him. "You broke my heart, Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "I felt invisible. Alone. Even when you were in the same room." "I know," he said. "And I hate that it took losing you to see it." The judge cleared her throat gently. "Mrs. Carter, would you like to proceed with the divorce?" The question hung in the air like a fragile thread. Ava closed her eyes. For months, she had prepared herself for this moment. She had attended doctor appointments alone. She had painted the nursery in a small apartment across town. She had told herself she didn't need him. That she was strong enough to do this on her own. And she was. But strength didn't mean she stopped loving him. When she opened her eyes, something had shifted. "I'd like a recess," she said quietly. The judge nodded. Outside, back in the hallway where it had all begun, they stood facing each other once more. "I can't go back to who we were," Ava said firmly. "I won't raise this baby in a house full of silence." "You won't have to," Daniel said. "I'm already looking for a therapist. I've cut my hours at the firm. I don't expect you to believe me today. But I'll prove it. Every day." She studied him, searching for the man she had fallen in love with. The one who used to dance with her in the kitchen at midnight. The one who cried the first time they saw a positive pregnancy test. He was still there. Buried. But there. "This baby deserves two parents who try," she said. "I'm ready to try," he replied. Weeks passed. The divorce was put on hold. Daniel moved into the guest room of their old house after Ava agreed to come back, temporarily. Not as husband and wife, but as two people willing to rebuild from the ground up. It wasn't easy. There were tense dinners. Therapy sessions that unearthed old wounds. Nights when Ava cried from fear that history would repeat itself. Mornings when Daniel fought the urge to retreat into old habits. But he didn't retreat. He attended every doctor's appointment. He learned how to assemble a crib. He read books about fatherhood. He listened, really listened, when Ava spoke. And slowly, the walls between them began to thin. The day their daughter was born, Daniel stood beside Ava, gripping her hand as she brought new life into the world. When he held the tiny, fragile bundle for the first time, tears streamed freely down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. Ava looked at him, exhausted but radiant. So are second chances, she said. Their marriage wasn't magically fixed. Love rarely works that way. But it was different now. Softer. More intentional. Built not on assumptions, but on effort. Years later, when their daughter asked why they had wedding photos that looked older than her baby pictures, Ava and Daniel would exchange knowing smiles. Because sometimes, Daniel would say, pulling both his girls close, people have to almost lose everything to realize what matters most. And every night, as he tucked his daughter into bed and kissed Ava goodnight, he silently thanked the moment that had frozen him in a courthouse hallway. The moment he saw that love had been growing quietly, even when he wasn't looking. The moment he chose not to walk away again. Because love isn't about never breaking. It's about having the courage to rebuild.